So thank you guys for coming. I would definitely like to introduce you to Julia Whitehouse, formerly Wiedeman. Formerly Wiedeman. She is a writer, storyteller, and comedy maker in New York City. Her show Naked People had a year-long run at UCB in both New York and LA, and was invited to the Women in Comedy Festival in 2013. She's performed stories for Ask Me Risk, Nights of Our Lives, The Moth, the soundtrack series, and the Moth stories you have online are fantastic. The Real Characters, just to name a few. She's produced a Funny Thing podcast and hosts a weekly storytelling opening mic happy hour, story hour at the Duplex every Monday, which is still cooking.
It's every single Monday.
All right. So she loves stories, she teaches storytelling, she's a stand-up, she does improv, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm a stand-up. I would say that I'm a host.
You're a host?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stand-up and storytelling, very different things.
Very different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll talk about that.
All right. So without further delay, Julia.
Hi. I kind of feel like standing up. May I?
Please.
Is that all right?
Please.
Okay, because I wore my show shoes. So, how is everybody? Good, good. Hi, I'm Julia Newly Whitehouse. I was invited here so kindly by Ben and Nathan. I'm very excited to keep you out of the rain tonight, basically. What I do is I make comedy. I make stories, I tell stories, and how did I come to do this? I was a theater major. When you're a theater major, you're basically signing up for doing anything but acting. That's, I think, signing up to be a waitress or a bartender or, as it were, eventually a storyteller. That's just how it is. You guys are all in a wonderful environment right now where you're learning and you get to have this wonderful safety spot where you get to create all the time, but then you leave one day and so you have to pay your rent. I'm sorry, unless you guys all have really wealthy parents. So if you're that person, you're not my audience. Or you are, I'm not sure. I can tell, really wealthy parents, right? Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I went to college for theater down in Virginia at George Mason University, and after I graduated from there, I decided that I was going to be a director, not an actor. That's what I'd spent my entire 4 years in George Mason doing, but I was determined to move to New York and be unique. So I decided to be a director. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be the one telling the actors what to do. And then shortly thereafter, moving here, I got a job. I applied at Starbucks and they rejected me. And then I had the greatest acting job of my life, which was doing PR for Revlon. Which is what, you look at me now, my makeup is amazing, but back then in 2002, I had a lot to learn. But I was in charge of a multi-million-dollar account and really nailing it. But that's all beside the point. That's not acting or storytelling or comedy making. It was a great deal of acting because I had to pretend like I knew what I was doing. But then eventually I quit that job and started doing stand-up and found that I wasn't very good at it. Even though everyone told me that I was very funny, and I'm not friends with any of those people any longer. But stand-up is a totally different thing. I mean, if you know any stand-ups, you know that they're always observing, always like nitpicking, trying to like, oh, what's at the heart of this? What's the dirtiest little bit of they break it apart and dissect things and analyze things to bits, which is an amazing skill. I don't have that skill for the rest of the world. I have that skill for me. For me, I'm not an expert on comedy making or storytelling. Sorry, I forgot to admit that. But I am an expert on me, and I think as artists, that's what you have to be, is an expert on yourself, whatever you're doing. So I spent years, always with the survival job, because once I quit that PR job, I was like, what am I doing? I'm not being the director. I don't even want to be a director. I want to be everything. I want to tell actors what to do, but I want to be an actor too. So I was doing the stand-up, and then I wasn't very good at, it's just, when you realize, oh no, I'm not good at this thing that I really want to be good at, so I stopped doing that. And eventually I found burlesque, which is something that anybody can be good at if you can take off your clothes. Yeah, is that what burlesque is? Oh my God, that's amazing. That is amazing, because I actually never perfected that skill with the tassels. It was more all about just, here's a funny scene where I have to take off my clothes and the punchline is my tits. Like that's kind of where I was, like, artistically speaking, I just wanted to have control over something. So artistically speaking, like, I've always been the kind of person that I didn't wait for the auditions. It was like, if someone was like, oh, we're auditioning, I'd be like, okay, if that, fits into my paying rent schedule, like, I let the rent paying jobs kind of take over a little bit too much, I would argue. Throughout my 20s, if I can give you that piece of advice, don't let money get in the way of doing your stuff. However, I will say that regardless of having those survival jobs, I didn't pursue like the acting gigs. I just made my own. I was like, I don't have time for somebody else to tell me that I can do their show. I'm gonna make my own show. And that's why burlesque was particularly attractive to me, because I could make like a 5-minute show, design my own costumes, design my own set, my props, and always have a ready and willing audience because of my tits. If you're comfortable doing that, I highly recommend it. It's lots of fun. And also, I never took off my clothes without getting paid for it, because that's, I have standards, or at least my nipples do. So the point is oh gosh, what is the point? I've lost the thread. Oh, doing a variety of different things. So burlesque was this thing that I could have complete control over. And, but eventually I got a little tired of the punchline always being, you guessed it, yeah! So I was a little tired of that, and I imagined that I had something else to offer, that I had something more to say. And I basically bit the bullet and decided to sign up for an improv class, because that was something that I was absolutely scared of. I thought, and I know this is, I'm speaking to the women particularly in the audience tonight, you're smart enough. Just always, whatever it is that you want to do, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, no, I can't do that, I'm not smart enough. Like that, I feel as though that I was trained somewhere along the line to believe that I couldn't join in the comedy gang, or I couldn't join in that, whatever it is. I feel like we all have women in particular, there's something that tells us, no, you can't because of your brain. And it's really, it's subtle. It's subtle. You don't run around thinking it like, but I thought, no, I'm not witty enough to do improv. Like, I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough. I was horrible at stand-up. But then I took the class. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be, you have to be able to put things together, sure. And you have to be able to be able to have some sort of mastery of the English language, whether you're, signing it or speaking it out loud. You want to have some sort of presentational value, but improv just requires you to listen. Just listen. And for about 7 years, yeah, I guess I continued. About 6, 7 years, I took improv classes and learned how to listen. And suddenly I was this much better performer than I'd ever been before, because I hadn't taken really the time. I was always thinking about myself, and suddenly I was outward and hearing people, and using that, kind of filtering it through this, and then project, creating a performance out of that. I also learned teamwork from that, from improv. An amazing, just skills that are life skills that I didn't quite have, that you don't, I guess you can learn them. This is a good program, you learn that. My sister went to SVA. She learned some good skills here. But I feel that also it takes time, a lot of time to develop the trust, to believe that you're going to be heard, and that and that you have the ability to listen to somebody. And then, true to form, I took all of that improv and sketch training from the UCB, where I had taken, that's an important detail that I left out, the UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade, just up the street. I took that, all those skills, and I decided to look inward, create my own show. I wasn't getting on their teams, or I wasn't auditioning to be a part of their, their culture. But I was like, I know I have something that is, I'm not going to subscribe to them, but I know that I'm still worth being on that stage. So I created my own show, and it was Naked People, and it was a story, a story of what it is to be emotionally naked and physically naked. So. I gave the UCB something they'd never seen before, a whole bunch of tits. But basically using all of the skills to, all of the kind of comedic skills that I'd learned, and applying them to my own personal story. And stories that I hadn't ever told before, because they had all seemed too serious. And I don't like playing the victim. That's not something that I like to be the one in charge of my own destiny and whatnot. And I don't like, but we all have shit that's happened to us. Sorry, can I swear?
No.
Okay. We all have crapola that has happened to us. My father's favorite phrase is caca pasa. Anybody know Spanish? So yeah, we all have baggage. We all have stuff that makes us feel like just blah, and like vomitous about our existence, and that's the stuff that people want to see. I know you don't believe me, perhaps, but it's true. People want to see when you're. I'm sorry. People want to see when you're the a-hole. People want to see when you're filled with shame. Oh, you were joking?
No,
okay, I couldn't tell. People want to see when you're shamed and lying on the floor and you've done something wrong. People want it. That's entertainment. If there's some sort of as long as you're not just laying on the floor and just being blah, disgusting and shameful. As long as there's some moment where that you'd be I was this way, but now I'm better, or I was this way, and now I'm worse. Some sort of journey. But that's the good stuff. People love confessions, things that you don't want to share. That's probably the stuff that you got to make your art about. I'm not saying probably, no, that is the stuff you have to make your art about. The stuff where your mom is no, don't tell anyone about that. That's the work that is going to be your greatest achievement, because it's going to feel so good. It's going to feel so good. Anyway, so Naked People happened, and I did that for a year, and it was just this amazing. I was so good. It was just an amazing experience for me to do this. It was a half-hour show. It wasn't very long at all, and I got to use all of the experience that I'd had, acting, writing, getting naked, all in one show, and being a bunch of different characters, and doing all of that in one show, and getting to, show myself off in this amazing way. But then suddenly one day the UCB told me, your run is ending. And isn't that just the worst? When you suddenly have to figure out what your next step is. You agree with me, right? Once you finish a project, you're oh no, but I did I have to do another project, but I don't have anything left. I just gave it my all, right? That's like, what do you do? You know, it's the artist's worst nightmare, or not worst nightmare, but what's the word when you make everything the worst? What's that word? That's the... Hyperbolic. I'm so hyperbolic. Yeah, that's right. What are you working on? That phrase, what are you working on? What's next? You know, like, ooh. And when you have nothing to say, when you just say, oh, well, I just finished this, who cares? Who cares about what you just did? People can't see it. The gallery closed, or the show's over. Nobody cares. Oh, it's available online. You meekly, mutter to people, and they're like, I don't care. What's next? So suddenly I didn't have anything, and this thing that had defined me for so long, I suddenly didn't have anymore, and the whole process of creating it had taken all of me. It involved, comedic sketches about touching myself as a teenager reading, romance novels. Like, how do you find that material again? That's so personal. I felt like, I have nothing else. But you always do. This is what I'm here to share with you, is that there's always something more. And it feels like a great deal of pressure now that I say it out loud, that you actually have so much more than you'll ever be able to share. But it's absolutely true. And a friend of mine, I'm all, I don't know what to do. And a friend of mine said, Julia, you gotta do storytelling. This friend of mine is a fellow David Crabb. A book of his just came out about a month ago called Bad Kid. I recommend it. You should get it. It's great. It's about growing up gay and goth in Texas. And, right? Specific, but relatable. But he was like, Julia, you have to do storytelling. And I was like, but I have nothing left. I don't know. But I took a little workshop with him and started developing some stories. And then I was telling stories at shows, and not fully considering myself a storyteller. I just had like one or two stories that I was, really had a good time telling. And I realized, how am I going to get really good at this? I should host a weekly show where I open the show every week. And very selfishly, I started this show, and I asked the UCB if they would, let me use their bar space, and I did for a good many, over a year. But within the first 3 months, I realized that this selfish motivation was completely out the door. I came to adore watching people tell their stories. Not that I hadn't really already enjoyed watching people tell stories. I love stories. But watching people develop their stories from like nothing. Sometimes somebody would come in and be like, I was, I'd pull their name out of the hat, and they'd be like, you know what, I came here with this story about the first time I kissed a boy, but that person's story about, wrecking their car made me think about the time when. And then suddenly they're telling a brand new story that they never told before, or that they weren't even prepared to tell. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's wonky. But either way, I was learning so much and fascinated by this process of development. And suddenly I found another truth I'm laying on you. It's never going to be perfect. And it's never going to be perfect. I'm sure people have told you that before, and perhaps you've told yourself, don't let good enough get in the way of perfect, or perfect get in the way of good enough. What's that phrase? Excuse me. But the point is that storytelling in particular, and live storytelling, it's going to be different every time that you tell it. When you're visual and creating it, I can't really quite speak to that exactly. I guess, watching my sister, she'll create stuff and then she'll be done and she'll be like, why did I do it like that? And it'll be so frustrating. But you can always do it again in another way, right? I mean, at least that's the way that I approach performance. That's the way that I approach storytelling. For me, is that if I don't tell a story the way that I great one night, that's all right, because I'm going to tell it. I know that I'm going to learn from that experience, that nugget of time, which is usually only about 5 to 10 minutes. That 10 minutes will inform that story forever. Because if I told it badly, or I didn't get a laugh where I thought that I would get a laugh, or I forgot some details, I know that the next time that I tell it, I'm not going to wait for the laugh. I'm not going to even think about that detail, because if I didn't include that detail the first time that I told the story, then it probably wasn't memorable enough to include. And so anyway, the point is, and I tell storytellers this all the time, is that the first time that you go up to the mic, it feels like the most precious thing that you've ever done. Like you're like, I've never done this before. It has to be perfect. I have to wait until I have the perfect story, and it's just not going to be. I had a storyteller come up to me once and say, I want to tell the story of watching my grandfather die, being the only one in the hospital with him when he died after a very long, painful disease, but it means so much to me. That memory means so much to me. I have to wait until the story's perfect. And I told her, absolutely not. To honor your grandfather, to honor your just storytelling in general, you have to prepare the story, yes, prepare the story, but then you have to tell this story, because those personal experiences, don't keep them inside. You can't, to tell it perfectly is to tell it without emotion, oftentimes. Like, when you watch a storyteller, oftentimes, and they're all actors, you guys, they all used to do theater. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But they go up and they try and monologue their story. Again, who cares? Who cares? I want to see the emotion. And that brings me to my point, a new point. So many points, so many points. I talked about how you're filled with stories, that you're filled with so much, more stories than you're probably going to ever be able to share. And the stories that you tell, no doubt there's an element of personal autobiographical, there's a autobiographical nature to them. And then therefore, there has to be emotion. Sorry, excuse me. I know I'm about to hack something up. Sorry, pardon me. Pardon me. If there's no emotion in your story, if you're not emotionally connected to what you're trying to share with the world, then there's absolutely no point in telling it. Like, if you're not having a good time drawing, or if you're not having a good time writing, then you don't put that story aside. Like, wait until you are excited to tell it. That isn't to say that if it's difficult for you to write down, that you shouldn't push through. If you have a hard story to tell, and you want to share it eventually, still plug through. But there should be an element of entertainment to everything that you do, because what we are doing, is something that other people that are not as privileged as us, oh gosh, daring as us to put ourselves out there. That's what they're looking to feed off, so that their days aren't just cubicles, so that their days aren't just like, hello, I scheduled that meeting, that's so that their days aren't just like the conversation that I heard on the subway here. These two women These two, they were so, and they didn't have the meeting when I told them that they should. And I'm really glad that you made that point, because that is a good point about meetings. I know, like it was just, these are the people that we want to see our stuff, so that they know that that's not all that their life is, like, because it can't possibly be. Right? We can't just be this and then we die. Meetings until we die, right? So we have a responsibility to be somewhat entertaining, whether it's like a good cry or a good laugh or something in between. There's something that's making this person like take a break from their whatever it is, not necessarily drudgery, but to take a break and read your work or watch your work. That's why I wear my show shoes. That's, not everybody can stand in these. This is entertaining just to watch somebody stand in them. I want to check a note. Just where I was going. Oh, so I was talking about emotion, and I was talking about your personal. I was talking about emotion, and I was talking about your personal stuff, your personal perspective. Don't skip the details. The times when you are feeling that, oh gosh, like no one's gonna relate to this particular like Pokemon card that I really loved, like, or whatever, like if you're telling a childhood story or something, like no one's gonna like understand like what it's like to, wear an always pad in, underwear that has too tight of a, cinch, like, nobody wears pads. Cool. But like like when the first time you get your period, and like that's like in pad, and they're so huge, and and you're thinking to yourself like, I don't need to mention that, because like I don't need to talk about that because it's too like it's too much, or it's or maybe like just mention pad. No, but if you say always, that gets specific, and then then people are thinking about their specific pad. Does that make sense? Specifics are our, I decided to use a pad as like, to illustrate the specifics.
It's a connective tissue.
Yeah. Oh, brother.
What?
This is how I like to roll, though. It's like it's not all planned out. It's like there's some notes, but like feel it out. You see how much I care about this, guys. Like I'm here. You're reading my emotions. But so specifics are our friends. You want to imbue your stories with so many specifics that you don't even know what to do with yourself, because not only does it make it more relatable, but it gets you excited about your personal story. It makes it yours. And you may be thinking, no, you know what? If I make it so specific, no one's gonna relate to it. And they're like, no, my story is such a particular story. If I make it so specific, like no one's gonna get it. I'm here to lay another bomb on you. You're not all precious snowflakes. So, like, you are, but you're not. Like, sorry, like, it's. I feel so hesitant to. I don't want to crush you, but you're not the only ones that have ever experienced all the things that you have experienced. It's just cannot be. Everyone's had. If everyone's had a bad day, everyone's had like a worse day. Like we're not all competing here. We can all relate to those, like whether it's a parent dying or a sister being rude, or a time you babysat and he wouldn't eat. That one's for you, Ben. Or like that's like every experience that we have. If we make it specific enough, people are immediately going to relate to it. If you just broadly, like I was a child living in the country, like who cares? I wasn't a child living in the country, but if you say I was a child living in a little stone house in the fields of Fairfax, Virginia, this is not true. So this is why I'm having difficulty. Okay, I'll come up with something new. If I just tell you, I moved around my entire life. This is a truth. I moved around my entire life. Who cares, right? Who cares? If I tell you that my father was a diplomat, and that's why I was born in Argentina, and then we moved to New York for a time, and then Hamburg, Germany, and then Athens, Greece, and then we lived in Venezuela and Jamaica and Honduras, and I went to boarding school. And that's, and my parents were like, they had a child in every country that we lived in because they were good Catholic rabbits. And it was like little human souvenirs, right? In all these places, in all of these places, this is where I came to, always learned how to adapt very quickly to any situation. And also, over time, realized that New York was the only town that I would ever fit in because it's all of the countries that I've lived in that I never fit in. Like I stuck out like a sore thumb, like red hair and, like imagine me in Jamaica. I went to a public school in Jamaica. I was like a little bloody Q-tip. And this is, and that's, I didn't come up with that myself either. A gym teacher told me that that's what I look like in Caracas, Venezuela. I know. What precious memories. Like that's kind of harassment, right? Like what, hey Julia, has anyone ever called you a bloody Q-tip? No? I'm 12. Why would you say that to a child? Anyway, the point is that now you have so much more information about how I grew up, right? You have so much more, maybe not all of it, but like in just a paragraph, and maybe you can't entirely relate to moving around your entire childhood, but maybe you're Catholic, or maybe you also come from a big family, or maybe a gym teacher said something strange to you once, like that's or maybe the big one, maybe you didn't fit in. No. From your silence, I know that you all didn't fit in. Also, I know you're in art school, so you all never fit in. But that's, just to say, I moved around my whole life. That's not giving you any information, nothing whatsoever. So just to add a few details, now you know a little bit more. And also, suddenly you care about me. Maybe not like so much, but you're sitting here and you're looking at me, so thank you. But so does that make sense? That you have to make somebody care about you. And the only way to do that is by giving them your perspective. You are precious snowflakes in your perspective, because we've all had, okay, let's say my parents are both alive. So this is an imagined situation, but it is my greatest fear. So just to say, let's say my mom dies, right? Maybe one of you also, or maybe your audience has a mother who has died. But the way that maybe it's the exact same way. Our mothers died in the exact same way. But your story is going to be different about your mother dying from cancer or whatnot, from breast cancer, let's say it's the specific cancer, and my mother dying from breast cancer is going to be a completely different story told out of my mouth, because we have two completely different perspectives. We're coming at it from two different, we're both redheads, so it's not entirely different, but that's the thing that you have to find your exact, and I know this is so trite, but sometimes when it's trite, it's right. You have to find your voice, your absolute, just your truth and the way that you like sharing. Here's another, I'm so sorry to drop another bomb per se, but you're not gonna find that voice for a while. It takes a while, and it also takes being out of school. Like that's just, get excited for when you're out of school, because that's when you really start finding your voice. When you're like suddenly all alone and there's not somebody telling you that you're doing it right, or that you're doing it wrong, or you could do it better. That like when you're the only one that's determining that is when you like really find how you enjoy to use your voice. And I like to, this is a new thing. I know we've got some educators in here. Tell me if this has been used before. I thought it up myself, but if it's been done, then I'll stop using it. Or credit the person who said it. But I like to think that we're all like story snipers. In that, like perhaps, like everybody, like if Kennedy is our story, right, and we all want to kill him. Yeah, okay, yeah. Kennedy's our story, and we all want to kill him, and we all want to kill that story, like really, really kill the president. Oh no, why did I do this one again? This is horrible. But if we all want to do that, and we're all horrible people, we all have to find our own grassy knoll, or a different, we're not going to take that one because it's already taken. We have to find a different perspective with which to kill that story. Does that make sense? Like, okay, let's go back to the imagined mother's dying. I'm so sorry if your mother is dead and this is horribly painful for you. Okay, so yeah, so imagine though, like that's, your perspective on that is going to be a completely different shot. That like a completely different focus than my perspective, because it's naturally going to happen. We don't have the same brain. We're going to focus on different things. I'm probably going to make it so much more about me. That's what I do. Yeah, seriously though, I imagine too often the amazing show I'm going to create when my mother passes away. God, I am the worst. I am the worst human being. This is being recorded. Oh no, oh no. Yeah, so, but anyway, isn't that engaging, watching somebody confess something horrible like that? Oh, you can trust me, you can trust me. I'm gonna tell you everything, everything that is in my brain. But anyway, so that's talk about emotions, and talk about details. Let's talk slightly about structure. Yeah, hold on. So I'm going to pass out something for everybody. If you would like this, here, you guys, here you go. This is something, oh yeah, here. This is something that I love sharing with people so that they can use it and throw it away. Learn it. Do you want one, Joan? And you're welcome. And was it? Oh, you got it. Everybody got it. So I was telling my personal story. I'll pick up that thread. So I started doing happy hour, story hour, my storytelling open mic every Monday. And I found that I loved watching the process of stories being discovered. And shortly thereafter, probably about a year, my friend David Crabb, again, he was like, hey, you should start teaching. And he helped me get into the story studio, where I teach a variety of different people, just like people that are like, I want to try something new, or actors that are like, hey, I tell stories all the time, I want to get into it, or people that are like, I ramble and I want to be much better at telling a story. That's not actually what I can teach anybody to do. I can teach you how to pull stories out of your brain, and it's this sheet that I love giving to people so that they can see how a story, kind of the box. If you're going to tell a structured story, this is how it should be structured, with five different layers, let's just say. So naturally, you want to set it up. You want to introduce yourself, and And then you want to get right into it. What's the inciting incident? And then raising stakes, like how does everything go awry? The main event, and then the resolution. To illustrate this, I'm going to attempt to tell one of my longer stories in a matter of sentences, okay? So, the setup. I'm in my senior year of high school. I am known all about the high school as the actor. I'm going to eventually be such a big deal. And I know that this is true because I have my braces off. And I also know, since my braces are off, I'm finally going to have a boy kiss me. Inciting incident. Flirting with a boy. His name is Patrick. I'm telling him that he's not strong. He's telling me that he is. I tell him that I'm stronger than him. He pulls my arms behind my back. I trip over my feet, fall on my face. I only taste a little blood, so I figure, but all my teeth are still there, so I figure everything's okay. I go away. Okay, yeah, everything's okay. He says, "Can I help?" I say, "No, everything's fine." Raising the stakes. Everything's not fine. I have to get an emergency root canal over Thanksgiving break. I'm staying with a friend of my mother's. I don't know her well. I don't tell her that anything is hurting, which it is, this enormous dull pain. And I'm watching my tooth. Like it's as though every hour it becomes a little bit more shaded in with a pencil, you know. That's relatable, right, artists? And I'm just watching this tooth get darker and darker and darker. Eventually, I can't bite into a sandwich without it shrieking, and she takes me to the dentist. Emergency root canal. They take the nerve out because it's already severed anyway. Don't need it. And I go back to school with a dentist bill for Patrick. I guess it's more the main event. Yeah, well, no, okay, so, no, it's not. No, it's not. So, for Patrick, which he refuses to pay. That's raising the stakes. He refuses to pay. And then our parents start arguing, and this is before email, so, you know, letters take a really long time. So Patrick and I were no longer friends, and the whole rest of my senior year, we couldn't get along because our parents were fighting over like this $400 dentist bill. 10 years goes by. I'm watching this tooth get darker and darker, like people say it's not noticeable, but I know they're lying to me. It's completely noticeable, and I have a big black dead front tooth, and I want to be an actor, and that's not the niche that I want to be in. You know, the black front tooth. That's what we need. Big dead black front tooth? Cool. So I took my headshots like this. I'm telling so much more of the story than I planned. But then the main event, 10-year high school reunion. There I am with my friends, and we're all singing the school songs, you know, M-E-R-C-E-R Mercersburg, boom! After the songs were sung and the bonfire was died down, there was an after party at the local bar. And I'm at the bar trying to get the bartender's attention, and there's Patrick, also trying to get the bartender's attention. He turns around and he says, "Well, hello, Julia Wiedeman," in his southern drawl. And I look at him, and he's a little, fatter. That's what 10 years will do. And he looks like he follows the impulse to drink every day. But when you're in your 20s, don't we all? And we chit-chat, talk about how long it's taken to get a drink. And then he says, "Julia, I'm so sorry for what I did to you all those years ago." and knowing exactly what he's talking about, I say, stop it, Patrick. Water under the bridge, not a big deal. I've decided, like in those 10 years, I decided to be a bigger person and not be mad at him anymore, you know? So I didn't even want to talk about this. I was like, no, it's all, don't worry about it. And he says, I've thought about it every day since it happened. I couldn't stand up to my father then, but I have my own money now. Let me pay to fix your tooth. And in that moment, resolution, I realized, decade plus without a friend over a stupid tooth. So, in the middle of Pennsylvania, in the middle of a bar, surrounded by people, I told Patrick that he could fix my tooth. So, and that's that story. It's so much longer, and there's a recording of it if you ever want to see it on the Risk podcast. But that's basically like that's how to tell that story to the book. I could mix it up though. I could do the inciting incident first. Wouldn't that be a much more engaging scene? Well, not necessarily an engaging scene. I'm in engagement enough. But you imagine if I started the story, I'm on the floor, and I taste blood in my mouth. You're like, wait, what the fuck is going on in this story? If that's how the story began, instead of just, I'm a high school girl and I want to be an actress. That's one way to start it. Or what if I started it with the resolution? What if I started at the end? That's why I say learn this, learn how to, the structure of it, but then throw it away. Mess with it. Because that's so much more fun to figure out all of the different ways that you can tell a story rather than just kind of sticking to one rote way. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anyway, I think those are all the points and all the bombs that I wanted to drop on you. Yeah, I could just check my notes, but if you have any questions, do I have any other thoughts? Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Unceremonious way of saying, I'm done, because I can't show you my tits. Yes? I can speak to the difference between a stand-up audience and a storytelling audience, but I have not. I spent my childhood traveling the world and have not, as a storyteller, had much experience in Europe as of yet. But I don't know, I'd say that David Sedaris is pretty popular over there, or at least perhaps he's not very popular, and that's why he likes living there.
Could you speak to kind of a dressing, like how to gauge an audience?
How to gauge an audience? Well, yeah. I would say that, this is one thing to know for certain, that a storytelling audience will be silent more often than not because they are listening to you. And not because they're not paying attention, they are listening. And they want to make sure that they capture every single detail that you're talking about. So oftentimes I'll have stand-ups that come to my storytelling open mic because they see open mic, and stand-ups, if you know any, they're just ravenous for their open mics. And so they go, oh, open mic, I'll go tell a story. And they think that they know what they're doing. And oftentimes they do, but they get so nervous when they don't hear feedback from the audience that they just start kind of joking about stuff. And it's like, I watch this very lovely woman, and I fear I scared her off of storytelling. She tried telling a story about an abusive situation that she was in. But she kept on joking about it throughout. And she was a stand-up, but she was trying to do something more serious. So she figures I'll go tell this serious story and still approach it the same way that I do stand-up comedy. And it just didn't work. And she got more and more nervous and kept on throwing more and more jokes at the situation, and it just, like, she just fell apart. Afterwards, because I didn't know that that was what the situation was that, like, it was her first time, and she was, now I have this perspective on the situation, but I thought she was just a stand-up going up and just, like, pooping on my mic. I take great pride in keeping it a storytelling open mic, because storytellers, we don't have a lot of places to fuck up, in a sense. We don't have a lot. You go to the Moth, you're watching people nail their stories, winning. It's a competition. My show is where you can be like, like I said, like, oh, I just thought of this, or this just happened to me. Is this strange? Here, blah. Or you can go there and have a fully prepared story that you like, that you've been telling 1,000 times, but you maybe want to shake it up and tell it a different way. And this woman just seemed to be just telling jokes. So I said, that's not what this is, and in a sense, shamed her in front of everybody. But, like, it said, hey, what you did was stand up. Can you come back next week and tell me more about when he threw that ketchup bottle at you? Tell me about that. And she didn't want to. She wasn't ready to. That's also actually a particular point. It's a little off topic, but tell the stories that you're ready to tell. If you're still sobbing, or if it's too hard for you to, like, go into detail about stuff, go see your therapist, or take some time away from that story. Because if you cannot relate the emotion without fully experiencing the emotion, you are not ready to tell that story. Because it's not going to have a perfect perspective. Like, it's going to be completely out of focus, because you're not going to be, like, I'm going back to the sniper metaphor. You're not going to completely see, you're going to, your shot's going to be completely off. You're not going to have a true voice, because you're going to have too many emotions, just mixing it all up inside. But to get back to audience, gosh, I wish I could speak to European audiences, but that does. Americans love, well, the Brits love, sex and, no. The Brits love, like, poopy humor, right? They love, like, poop and making fun of handicaps, and it's true. And Americans, we love sexual stuff and shameful stuff. Also some potty humor, but I think it's safe to say that if you're confessing something, and here in America, people are going to eat it up. If you have enough perspective on it to be able to point to, like, whether or not you really were an asshole in that moment or something, yeah, I think Americans like truth. Yeah, I basically am agreeing with the man that told you that already. So yeah, I would like to think that Europeans would feel that way as well, but I don't know. I can't say. Masturbatory? Yeah. Well, that's right up my alley. I'm happily married, but seriously though, I think that. Oh, sorry.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Oh no, they're not. No. You're right. And sometimes okay, never mind. No, but I guess but you know what? I'd argue that those myths come from a place of ego as well. Like, what? Okay, at the end of the day, what are we all trying to do here? Like, are we just trying to just, like, feel good by just putting art? That's not going to work. It's not going to work. That's what I mentioned at the top. Like, it has to be somewhat entertaining, right? There has to be an element of what you're doing that is fun for people to, or emotional for people to pick up and watch or read. Myths are fun to read. Whenever I get sick, I have a perfect, I have this book of Ukrainian fairy tales. All the fairy tales, they're all the same. It's always a fox eats a cat and then the cat eats the fly, or, oh no, that's wrong. That would be, anyway, but it all has a fox and a cat and a chicken and and everybody's working together to kill the princess. And, but they all come from a place of wanting to learn, wanting to discover something about ourselves as humans. And that's what we're doing when we're sharing these bits of ourselves, is we're saying, ugh, I did this wrong one time. If you did it wrong too, that's okay. Like, that's what we're doing with our stories. And that's what I would say that myths are doing, myths and fairy tales are telling us as well, is that there's a shared experience here, that you're not alone. Again, when it's trite, sometimes it's right. Because I get to do it every week. I get to go up there and I get to say that, like, sometimes it's just like stories that are still in their embryos, like they're not ready for public consumption yet, but it's every week, so I'm not necessarily always bringing a perfect story. But that's also to show people that they can fuck up at my show, they can bring something that's perhaps not ready, but they're like, I think there's a nugget here, maybe, ooh. So I start every show and I get to know that I'm not alone, because I'm getting an immediate reaction from people. Sometimes it's not always, laughter and whatnot, and they're being quiet and listening, but there's always, there are people witnessing my thought process. And I feel all the better for it. And then I get to watch 6 or 7 people go through the exact same thing, discover that they're not alone either. I had a storyteller a couple weeks back tell a story that was just, it wasn't perfect. Like, he was still working it out. And he tried to save himself at the end, being like, I know it was really nice that she gave me a blowjob, but it was really bad. And like he had spent the entire story talking about how horrible this blowjob had been, and we didn't care about him. We were just thinking about this poor girl, But then he realized by the end of his story, he's like, I know, like, I'm bad. And I was like, too late, guy. We already know, like, you should have told us throughout the story that you are this mean guy, just getting blowjobs and judging them. This is still being recorded, right? But sometimes just the act of like saying things out loud, like, I know this is one of my storytelling friends, I know he prepared this story, but he hadn't said it out loud to people. So the immediate feedback he got was, oh, I gotta admit to being the asshole much earlier in the story. Like, that's what he learned that day. Anyway. Does that answer your question?
To that end, I mean, you've been very successful about defining your identity, your voice, your
right.
narratives. Can you speak to how you found that?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of alluded to it to the beginning, but once you started cooking, when did you really know, like, this was your shtick?
What I wanted to do?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and this is, I'm gonna get a little sad. We're gonna get a little sad. I like most ladies, like most people, I think, just in general. You choose you have a bad relationship that I wouldn't say this bad relationship defined me entirely, but it very much it was exactly a year, from October 21st, 2007 to October 21st, 2008. I met him, and on the 21st in 2008, he threw me down a flight of stairs. And Ben, you know this story, because I was supposed to babysit for you the day that I put him in jail. But after that relationship, it took a few months, but very quickly did I realize that I had just spent an entire year, exactly a year, never saying exactly what was on my mind. I had spent an entire year being dishonest with not only the people around me, but with all of this. I would have a thought, and I would immediately backtrack or justify it, or just flip the script. I am a huge diary writer. I can't recommend diary writing or journaling enough. It is very egocentric. It is very masturbatory. It's every night I just unload a bunch of thoughts and then go, like, I'm so good. But I don't have a great memory, and possibly because I write everything down. But I get to go back and look at the time, like I recently looked back on I went to beauty school recently, and I looked back at the past few months, and I realized back in January how sad I was. Like I don't have a memory of being so sad, but I was really sad, and I have that from my journal. I don't have that from the relationship because I stopped writing. Like I stopped writing to myself. Like I just stopped. I stopped doing burlesque. I stopped doing everything that all of this was. Everything that I had created just simply to have a boyfriend who took me to the Hamptons. And I figured it was right enough. And that's embarrassing to admit, that I allowed a fellow who had money kind of run me for a little while, but that's absolutely true. I was 27 years old and not making any money, and I figured that's what you do. And he yelled at me and he made me feel horrible, but you know what? I could work on some things, like I should be more forgiving. Like that's and that was the script that I flipped every single day. And then I almost died, and I suddenly realized that I'd lost myself. But I'd lost myself well before I met him, that I hadn't been Julia for a really long time. So in those months after this, putting a boyfriend in jail, look at me trying to make it funny. It's not, but I mean, seriously, don't fuck with Julia. Because I'll eventually put you in jail. If you scare me just like maybe like 10 times, 15 times, like, okay, I don't, yeah. Anyway, so the point is that I spent the months after that, like, just doing whatever Julia wanted to do. I tried to get back to the girl that was, like, virginal, like the girl that didn't know what it was like to have a dick inside her. And I know that sounds really crass, and I apologize, but, like, it all changes when you start having sex. Like it all changes when you start realizing that you have some sort of like, sexuality that somebody could deny or say yes or deny. And suddenly I wanted to just get back to not caring about that anymore. Like the girl that would put braids in her hair and do, stomp with my friends in Jamaica in the yard and like look in the mirror, like forget that I was white. Like I want to get back to the girl that was like, who just didn't give a fuck anymore. I wanted to get back to her. And so a lot of that, I just started writing whatever was in my head, saying whatever was in my head, and learning some tact along the way. Not a lot, but that's where. And so honesty became my my flag. I'm like, I'm honest, and not the kind of honesty that's like, I'm gonna tell you how it is. No, it was like just this. I'm going to be honest with this always. Like if I don't enjoy something, I'm not going to go do it. Like if I don't want to go to a birthday party, I'm not going to go to that birthday party. If I don't, if I don't want to eat that dinner, I will make a new dinner. If I want to stay up all night, I'm going to stay up all night. And for a time, I couldn't go to sleep because of the dreams. But that's, like I just focused on just doing everything and anything that would feed this girl. And so my writing process and my, kind of development of my art started to be always and just a lot. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I definitely feel as though I am constantly, perpetually working on my next project, but creating so much content that never sees the light of day. So much stuff just to get like that one frame, just to get that one, oh God, oh, that page looks so good. And it's only the corner of the page, but oh God, that looks so good. Oh God, or oh my God. You guys, so the story of this horrible 1 year, bad relationship, everyone's, like my fault and his fault, shouldn't have been together. But the story of that, I wrote a 45-minute show about that story, about that whole thing. Then I realized that it didn't need to be 45 minutes. And I trimmed it all down, and it became I think it's a 10-minute story now. It's actually available on the Risk podcast if you ever want to hear it. And it's my favorite. It's my favorite that I ever told the story, and it's the shortest that I've ever told it. And there's one joke in it. Like if I don't write a line as good, and I'm not going to ruin it. You guys listen to it. But there's one joke in it that if I don't write something that good for another 5-10 years, I'll be all right with that, because it makes me so happy that I came up with it. So like we're always just chasing that one corner of the page, chasing that one line, because they're not always going to be great lines. They're going to be good. They're going to be fine. But when you get that great line, what was I speaking to? Oh, the process. Just create content nonstop. That's because eventually you'll have one little thing. And it'll be worth it. It's so strange, it'll be worth it. It's so upsetting. There's nowhere else, no other discipline. Artists in general, just like no other discipline requires so much for so little, but that so little is so much more. That we're just the best. We're the best. We have the luckiest job. I would say, I used to say Gilda Radner, and that isn't not true. But she was a very early influence. And just this weekend, I was reading her book, It's Always Something, and not a good book. So I would not say her as a writer. It was very all over the place. It was very, it wasn't my cup of tea. Very specific. It had all the makings of a good book, but I just, so Gilda Radner. Obviously, any comedy maker would be a miss. I would be remiss to not mention Louis C.K. Obviously, talk about somebody who's also, he's been doing this for years, and I think it's safe to say that it's really only in the last 5 or so, in the last 5 or 6, that he's really nailing it. And the reason why is because he's just saying exactly what's on his mind. And I think before that, his career, what just wasn't as gut-wrenching because it wasn't as honest, I would say. But then, I guess Louis C.K., Gilda Radner, David Sedaris, definitely, and who's that other writer? Oh shoot. He's a contemporary of David Sedaris, but he's dead.
David Rakoff.
David Rakoff, yeah. If I could, like, that's a great sadness in my life that I never got to meet him and tell him how much I wanted to be like him. But then it's a great relief that he never got to meet me, because I would have just embarrassed myself entirely. But I'd also say This American Life, Ira Glass is a huge influence. Everything that he says about storytelling is, he had years and years upon years of experience. So like, he has a YouTube video about storytelling, so check that out. I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's amazing. Yeah. My show, the format is, it's free, it's fun, it's supportive. Go in, you write your name on a piece of paper, throw it in the bucket, and then I go up, I tell my story, and I pull names out of the bucket. I pull them 3 at a time. I don't screen. If you put your name in the bucket, you're probably going to tell a story. If by the end of the hour your name does not get pulled out of the bucket, you get to go first the next time that you come. So you're always going to get to tell your story. Sorry, my throat is about to. Have I been talking for a while? But so there is no screening. If you want to tell a story, you get to tell a story. I'll give you 2. One, most recently, a friend of mine, who's a friend of mine because of the show, he came to the show all the time. He told a wonderful story about New York and how it's this this kind of like this fantasy place. When he was a child, he was like, oh, I'll move there, you know, and moving to New York, he was like, it was like it wasn't, he was like working a day job and he wasn't doing anything creative. And then like, and it was just this full long story about being so sad. And then it ends with like his resolution was, and then I found happy hour, story hour. And I was like, so that affected me. That was like, I mean, I've been running the show for like two years, a little over 2 years. And it's, I do have like this kind of wealth of people that whether or not they tell stories about like my show, they oh gosh, I keep on hitting it, I'm so sorry. I know I'm giving something to the community. It's you know, I get to tell my story, but I feel like I'm giving back to a group of artists that wouldn't necessarily have a place to go. The Moth is a wonderful, wonderful institution, but it's also very intimidating. And oftentimes you can put your name in the hat, you know, like story, you know, time after time, and it's like, you know, $12 to go, and you know, like you put your name in the hat and you wait and wait, and then you don't get to go, and it can be kind of disappointing and can be a little. But my show, you're always going to get to tell your story. I like to say that we're like the weird little stepchild or stepsister of the Moth, you know, because we're free and there's no competition, and you know, I give you the exact same amount of time that the Moth gives you as well. So you're like practicing for the Moth. But the other story that truly affected me, and this is, I think, speaks to another point. When a friend of mine, her name is Michelle, she is actually a Moth winner now as well, using this story, but like way early on, she told a story about her, like finding out that her parents were racists, because she wanted to introduce them to her black boyfriend, and whom she loves very much, and like was just stunned, like had no idea. Like they're upper middle class Jewish family, and her father is writing her emails like, I had no idea your self-esteem was so low. Like, who are these people? She had no idea. And that story affects me. Not only was it I mean, it's a very hard story and a very personal story, but it affects me because I've seen her tell this story a variety of different times, and she's living it. And I am fascinated by people that are able to tell stories within their existence. You know, when their perspective, like, when they can have perspective that doesn't involve time. Does that make sense? I think time is the integral, you need time for most perspective. But when you can still have perspective without having the luxury of all that time, I'm fascinated by that. So that's another story that I think she's going to have an even better story when she is, beyond, when she's even further, when she's married, right? It's going to be an even more interesting story, but even so, like, to be able to have any perspective on such an emotional, like, oh my God, like, my parents listened to Chris Plant, and that's upsetting in itself. But I don't know if you know, I don't know, he's like a younger Rush Limbaugh, he's like, I don't know. Yeah, I know. So like, I'll go home and I'll be like, okay, this is, and I love my parents. I know they're not these, but they can't be these people, are they? Yeah, but they're, but it's like, oh, that's not a big deal. But if they refuse to meet the man that I loved, I don't know if I would be able to, like, mentally handle that, let alone get behind a microphone and be like, this is my everyday. You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that? But she's figured out a way how to do that, and I think that's... I would say that it's easier. It's easier to admit something personal or share something perhaps shameful or intimate with a group of people, because you've got the buffer of being on stage. Because if you're alone with somebody, and like if you guys weren't here and I had to tell you something, it would just be, I have to rely on his reaction, for every sentence. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. Like, what if he did something like that? I mean, have you ever been in a job interview? Job interviews are the worst. Tell me about yourself. Like, but I get behind a microphone. I can tell, like, this is so much more fun because you're on stage. You're the entertainer. You're the one in charge. You get to determine how much you give, and how quickly or how slowly, and you get to decide that. You're the one in charge. When it's one-on-one, it feels a lot more like the person not talking is in charge. Does that make sense? On stage, it's just you. Yeah. There's freedom in that. You're the boss. That's why I've always created my own work. I like being the one in charge and the performer. I want to, I said that I invite you guys all to come to the show because, well, my sister is a good example. She came here to SVA. She won the Zarek grant. She's an illustrator. She lives down in Charlottesville, Virginia now. She teaches at James Madison. Sophia's doing really well. But she had, excuse me, she's been on a bunch of different panels. She had a whole series of stuff. I look her up, sophiadraws.com. And she likes telling her stories on the page, drawing. I love her artwork. That's how she tells her stories. But she came and she would come and tell a few stories at Happy Hour, Story Hour as well. And that, being able to tell those stories in front of an audience gave her a perspective that she never gets when she draws it. And people will come up to her table at MoCA or whatever and be like, oh, wow, I really love your stuff. I want to buy the next installment or whatever. Like, she gets that feedback. But you're never going to get the same kind of feedback than you will behind a microphone, telling an audience, like, whether or not they're, like, audibly reacting, you'll feel them. You'll feel what it's like. You'll feel how details are hitting. And I challenge you to attempt that. If it's not your way of storytelling, I challenge you to try it at least once, to know what it's like, to see how it informs your art. Because I don't have a specific instance to point to, but I know my sister has benefited from every time that she has told a story on stage. It helps what she puts down on the paper. Yeah, so my challenge to you.
At your show, is there a time limit? Like
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah. You can always say, that's part one. I play the ukulele to let people know that their time is
Do you play the ukulele, or you just riff it?
Very poorly. Very poorly. Yeah.
Nice.
I tried, 2 years ago, I guess it was. Yeah, a little over 2 years ago. I came back from a commercial shoot where I played a zombie, a little too well, I think. The commercial didn't play often, and it was for Nickelodeon, and I was too scary. But they cast me because of how good I was. So I still made that dough, but I was so exhausted by the end of the day, and my husband wasn't home. And I was just sitting, and I didn't feel like watching anything. Like, that kind of tired where you're like, I can't sleep, but I don't want to watch TV, and And I looked under the television, and for whatever reason, that's where this ukulele was living. It was just there, and it was my husband's from he had exchanged a painting for a ukulele, or there had been some sort of exchange of art for art forms, and he never played it. He doesn't know how. I lifted it up and I started playing. I was like, all right, I'll use, okay. And I've been playing that poorly ever since. Yeah. Maybe a couple YouTube videos under my belt, but everything feeds the well. Everything feeds the well. This is such a precious time that you have being in school and constantly creating your art. And you're going to leave school and you're going to find that, you have that day job, or maybe you have that job while you're here in school, but as well, but suddenly paying the rent is going to feel like that's what you have to do. And your art will feel like it's falling to the wayside, but just remember that everything that you do, there are no regrets for any time spent away from your art, as long as you get back to it, because all of that time will feed the work. You'll be able to draw upon all of that experience, just because you were there. Yeah.
Well, on that note.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I decided to be a director. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be the one telling the actors what to do. And then shortly thereafter, moving here, I got a job. I applied at Starbucks, and they rejected me. And then I had the greatest acting job of my life, which was doing PR for Revlon. Which is what, you look at me now, my makeup is amazing, but back then in 2002, I had a lot to learn, but I was in charge of a multi-million-dollar account and really nailing it. But that's all beside the point. That's not acting or storytelling or comedy making. It was a great deal of acting because I had to pretend like I knew what I was doing. But then eventually, I quit that job and started doing stand-up, and found that I wasn't very good at it, even though everyone told me that I was very funny. And I'm not friends with any of those people any longer. But stand-up is a totally different thing. I mean, if you know any stand-ups, you know that they're always observing, always nitpicking, trying to what's at the heart of this? What's the dirtiest little bit of they break it apart and dissect things and analyze things to bits, which is an amazing skill. I don't have that skill for the rest of the world. I have that skill for me. For me, I'm not an expert on comedy making or storytelling. Sorry, I forgot to admit that. But I am an expert on me, and I think as artists, that's what you have to be, is an expert on yourself, whatever you're doing. So I spent years, always with the survival job, because once I quit that PR job, I was like, what am I doing? I'm not being the director. I don't even want to be a director. I want to be everything. I want to tell actors what to do, but I want to be an actor too. So I was doing the stand-up, and then I wasn't very good at, it's just, when you realize, oh no, I'm not good at this thing that I really want to be good at. So I stopped doing that. And eventually I found burlesque, which is something that anybody can be good at if you can take off your clothes. Yeah, is that what burlesque is? Oh my God, that's amazing. That is amazing, because I actually never perfected that skill with the tassels. It was more all about here's a funny scene where I have to take off my clothes and the punchline is my tits. Like that's kind of where I was, like, artistically speaking, I just wanted to have control over something. So artistically speaking, like, I've always been the kind of person that I didn't wait for the auditions. It was like, if someone was like, oh, we're auditioning, I'd be like, okay, if that, fits into my paying rent schedule. Okay, I can tell you. People want to see when you're shamed and lying on the floor and you've done something wrong. People want it. That's entertainment. If there's some sort of, like, as long as you're not just like laying on the floor and just being bleh, like disgusting and shameful, like, as long as there's a some moment where that you'd be like, I was this way, but now I'm better, or I was this way and now I'm worse. Some sort of journey. But that's the good stuff. People love confessions, things that you don't want to share. That's probably the stuff that you got to make your art about. Like, no, I'm not saying probably, no, that is the stuff you have to make your art about. The stuff that where your mom is like, no, don't tell anyone about that. Like, that's the work that is going to be your greatest achievement, because it's going to feel so good. It's going to feel so good. Anyway, so Naked People happened, and I did that for like a year, and it was just this amazing. I was so good. It was just an amazing experience for me to do this. It was a half-hour show. It wasn't very long at all, and I got to use all of the experience that I'd had, acting, writing, getting naked, all in one show, and being a bunch of different characters, and doing all of that in one show, and getting to, show myself off in this amazing way. But then suddenly one day the UCB told me, your run is ending. And isn't that just the worst, when you suddenly have to figure out what your next step is? You agree with me, right? Like, once you finish a project, you're like, oh no, but I have to do another project, but I don't have anything left. I just gave it my all, right? That's like, what do you do? It's the artist's worst nightmare, or not worst nightmare, but what's the word when you make everything the worst? What's that word? That's the... Hyperbolic. I'm so hyperbolic. Yeah, that's right. What are you working on? That phrase, what are you working on? What's next? Like, ooh. And when you have nothing to say, when you just say, oh, well, I just finished this, who cares? Who cares about what you just did? People can't see it. The gallery closed, or the show's over. Nobody cares. Oh, it's available online. You meekly, mutter to people, and they're like, I don't care. What's next? So suddenly I didn't have anything, and this thing that had defined me for so long, I suddenly didn't have anymore, and the whole process of creating it had taken all of me. It involved, comedic sketches about touching myself as a teenager reading, romance novels. Like, how do you find that material again? Like, that's so personal. I felt like, I have nothing. Like, I let the rent-paying jobs kind of take over a little bit too much. I would argue throughout my 20s, if I can give you that piece of advice, don't let money get in the way of doing your stuff. However, I will say that regardless of having those survival jobs, I didn't pursue like the acting gigs. I just made my own. I was like, I don't have time for somebody else to tell me that I can do their show. I'm gonna make my own show. And that's why burlesque was particularly attractive to me, because I could make like a 5-minute show, design my own costumes, design my own set, my props, and always have a ready and willing audience because of my tits. If you're comfortable doing that, I highly recommend it. It's lots of fun. And also, I never took off my clothes without getting paid for it, because that's, I have standards, or at least my nipples do. So the point is, oh gosh, what is the point? I've lost the thread. Doing a variety of different things. So burlesque was this thing that I could have complete control over. And, but eventually I got a little tired of the punchline always being, you guessed it, yeah! So I was a little tired of that, and I imagined that I had something else to offer, that I had something more to say. And I basically bit the bullet and decided to sign up for an improv class, because that was something that I was absolutely scared of. I thought, and I know this is, I'm speaking to the women particularly in the audience tonight, you're smart enough. Just always, whatever it is that you want to do, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, no, I can't do that, I'm not smart enough. Like that, I feel as though that I was trained somewhere along the line to believe that I couldn't join in the comedy gang, or I couldn't join in that, whatever it is. I feel like we all have women in particular, there's something that tells us, no, you can't because of your brain. And it's really, it's subtle. It's subtle. You don't run around thinking it like, but I thought, no, I'm not witty enough to do improv. Like, I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough. I was horrible at stand-up. But then I took the class. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to be, you have to be able to put things together, sure. And you have to be able to be able to have some sort of mastery of the English language, whether you're, signing it or speaking it out loud. You want to have some sort of presentational value, but improv just requires you to listen. Just listen. And for about 7 years, yeah, I guess I continued. About 6, 7 years, I took improv classes.
So thank you guys for coming. I would definitely like to introduce you to Julia Whitehouse, formerly Wiedeman. Formerly Wiedeman. She is a writer, storyteller, and comedy maker in New York City. Her show Naked People had a year-long run at UCB in both New York and LA, and was invited to the Women in Comedy Festival in 2013. She's performed stories for Ask Me Risk, Nights of Our Lives, The Moth, the soundtrack series, and the Moth stories you have online are fantastic. The Real Characters, just to name a few. She's produced a Funny Thing podcast and hosts a weekly storytelling opening mic happy hour, story hour at the Duplex every Monday, which is still cooking.
It's every single Monday.
All right. So she loves stories. She teaches storytelling. She's a stand-up. She does improv, kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm a stand-up. I would say that I'm a host.
You're a host.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stand-up and storytelling, very different things.
Very different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll talk about that.
All right. So without further delay, Julia.
Hi. I kind of feel like standing up. May I?
Please.
Is that all right?
Please.
Okay, because I wore my show shoes. So, Yeah. So, how is everybody? Good, good. Hi, I'm Julia Newley Whitehouse. I was invited here so kindly by Ben and Nathan. I'm very excited to keep you out of the rain tonight, basically. What I do is I make comedy. I make stories, tell stories, and how did I come to do this? I was a theater major. When you're a theater major, you're basically signing up for doing anything but acting. That's, I think, signing up to be a waitress or a bartender or, as it were, eventually a storyteller. That's just how it is. You guys are all in a wonderful environment right now where you're learning and you get to have this wonderful safety spot where you get to create all the time, but then you leave one day and so you have to pay your rent. I'm sorry, unless you guys all have really wealthy parents. So if you're that person, you're not my audience. Or you are, I'm not sure. I can tell, really wealthy parents, right? Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so I went to college for theater down in Virginia at George Mason University, and after I graduated from there, I decided that I was going to be a director, not an actor. That's what I'd spent my entire 4 years in George Mason doing, but I was determined to move to New York and be unique. And learned how to listen, and suddenly I was this much better performer than I'd ever been before because I hadn't taken really the time. I was always thinking about myself, and suddenly I was outward and hearing people, and using that, kind of filtering it through this, and then project, creating a performance out of that. I also learned teamwork from that, from improv. An amazing, just skills that are life skills that I didn't quite have, that you don't, I guess you can learn them. This is a good program, you learn that. My sister went to SVA. She learned some good skills here. But I feel that also it takes time, a lot of time to develop the trust, to believe that you're going to be heard, and that and that you have the ability to listen to somebody. And then, true to form, I took all of that improv and sketch training from the UCB, where I had taken, that's an important detail that I left out, the UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade, just up the street. I took that, all those skills, and I decided to look inward, create my own show. I wasn't getting on their teams, or I wasn't auditioning to be a part of their, their culture. But I was like, I know I have something that is, I'm not going to subscribe to them, but I know that I'm still worth being on that stage. So I created my own show, and it was Naked People, and it was a story, a story of what it is to be emotionally naked and physically naked. So. I gave the UCB something they'd never seen before, a whole bunch of tits. But basically using all of the skills to, all of the kind of comedic skills that I'd learned and applying them to my own personal story. And stories that I hadn't ever told before because they had all seemed too serious. And I don't like playing the victim. That's not something that I like to be the one in charge of my own destiny and whatnot. And I don't like, but we all have shit that's happened to us. Sorry, can I swear?
No.
Okay. We all have crapola that has happened to us. My father's favorite phrase is caca pasa. Anybody know Spanish? So yeah, we all have baggage. We all have stuff that makes us feel like just blah, and like vomitous about our existence, and that's the stuff that people want to see. I know, you don't believe me perhaps, but it's true. People want to see when you're, people want to see when you're the a-hole. People want to see when you're filled with shame. Oh, you were joking?
No,
oh.
go.